This is going to be an Advent homily, but we're going to come at it the long way round. So as they say in the media, watch this space. Some of you may have seen the message that I was asked to contribute to the Christmas mailing that was sent out to the supporters of St. Augustine's Seminary. There I talked about what has happened to Advent in the world that surrounds us, all here in Canada, and in some ways, sadly, in our own changing patterns in our Catholic world too here. And there are two elements to what has happened. First of all, the whole period between Halloween, way back at the end of October, and Christmas Day on the 25th of December, so we're talking about 2 whole months, has now become, more or less officially, the Christmas season. And there's a kind of ramping up of this after American Thanksgiving, which was, of course, Thursday of this past week. And it's not just Christian feasts like Christmas that are involved in Advent, but even the notorious Black Friday is no longer the single day following American Thanksgiving. It too has been stretched, both before and after, to get at customers more easily and extend the advertising. The second element, though, is that the period after Christmas has now disappeared. There are no longer the 12 days of Christmas to celebrate the feast, going all the way to Epiphany. The 12 days have been replaced by an endless Boxing Day with all its sales. It stops briefly to recognize the New Year's Day, but even continues on past. This is the new reality. This is the Christmas season. And of course, all of this is commercial. It's all about buying and selling. But it shows that the merchants in the temple have effectively won the battle. And Jesus has been driven out of the temple. There is, I think, however, another element to what's going on, deeper and in some ways for us as Christians more dangerous than just the inevitable commercialness. We can see that in some of our own shrines around the world. Before you get there, there are streets full of shops selling you things. The turning of the meaning of Christmas is this more dangerous element, and the Advent that used to precede it into something else, something quite different. This second element, which is usually found more in things like newspaper editorials, wrapping up statements at the end of a newscast, is the attempt to provide an acceptable message to replace the Christian sense of what Christmas is. And this is now called the spirit of Christmas. And the word spirit, I think, is important because the whole point is to provide, to substitute really, a spiritual sense or dimension to go along with all the buying and selling. You've all heard some Hollywood starlet say, I'm a terribly spiritual person. But of course, I don't have any religion, or certainly not any organized religion. But the reason I call this dangerous is because spiritual, used in this way, in the way of the world now, has nothing to do with what it means for us as Christians. For us, the spiritual is the work of the Holy Spirit in us and in the whole of creation, transfiguring all into the image of Christ. But this new spirit of Christmas, this new essence to substitute for what has gone, its preferred image and language is that of light. And of course, it's backed up here because normally, not all every year, but normally Christmas and Hanukkah go together, and the central image in Hanukkah, which starts last night, in fact, today is the first day of Hanukkah, is the menorah, this set of 7 lights, the candlestick, and the legendary miracle that it commemorates. But you can also throw in the Hindu feast of Diwali beforehand, and it's all light, but what does light mean, of course, is the question. In the secular approach, light is a kind of triumph over darkness, the spirit of light, the spirit of darkness. It's not the light of Christ. You think back to what we do in the Paschal Vigil, where there is this sense of the light of Christ, the Paschal candle overcoming the darkness in the church. We have our own symbolism, of course, but at the center of it is the person of Christ. What's at the center of this? What replaces Christ is made to stand all by itself for goodness, human joy, human warmth. And this is the language of all the holiday cards. They're really no longer Christmas cards, mostly. It's season's greetings, it's holiday, but the flavor is light, joy, warmth, the fire in the home. And of course, here in the north, it's backed up by the beginning of longer days. Just before Christmas, the days start to get longer. The light begins to claw back the darkness. Now, ironically, of course, because everything now is political, even this secularized spiritual vision based in light is under attack. It can be denounced as a kind of hidden racism. Light, whiteness, white people, the good guys, the heroes. Darkness, blackness, black people, people of darker skin, the bad people, the villains. This kind of thinking has been brought forward even to deal with these images, what seem like natural symbolic images of light and darkness. And it's just as childish as in the old movies when the good guy wore the white hat, and the bad guy wore the black hat. Now, let's step back a bit. This is the long way around to Advent. Canada is not known for its philosophers. If I asked you a little quiz now, name 5 prominent Canadian philosophers, I think we would all fail, including the faculty. The 2 better known names, most prominent names, are the Jesuit father, Bernard Lonergan, and the professor at McGill, Charles Taylor. Both of them, ironically, are Catholics. And in his great work, his sort of magnum opus, Charles Taylor sets out to describe the secularism that has surrounded us all today, and which we feel at this time in a particular way. And to show that what has been substituted for Christian faith at its core and the content of our Christian religion, to this substitute, Taylor has given the name of fullness. Fullness. That sense of being filled with what every human being yearns and longs for, beyond the obvious needs of food and shelter and pleasure, power, experiences. There's something, not just more, but something else that is needed to fill us, to fulfill us as human beings. And his book sets out to show that what secularism has done is to provide that in a way that doesn't either involve or require God. I don't know about some of your families, but in my family, there are people who are good people, as we say, but who have no sense at all, and in fact reject the notion of God. They don't need that in order to seek a kind of human fulfillment, human goodness. That's the new thing, says Taylor. Now, each of us as a human being has a capacity for a yearning, a hunger for that which goes beyond our immediate needs. God says in the Psalms, "Open wide your mouth, and I will fill it." And the psalmist is not making God talk about your next meal, because we know that man does not live on bread alone. There's something deeper that needs filling. And we have our own gospel texts about what fullness means. Jesus in John 10, "I have come that they may have life and have it to the full." What is that fullness of life? It isn't just more of anything. It's something else. And the other wonderful image from the Synoptic Gospels of the reward that is promised us, poured into our lap, shaken together, running over. Fullness. And finally, and perhaps most deeply, there's what St. Paul tells us in Ephesians chapter 3, towards the end. He says, "May God grant you that Christ may dwell in your hearts through faith, that you, being rooted and grounded in love, may have power to comprehend." And he doesn't mean just know, understand. Comprehend means to be able to receive, to take in. To comprehend with all the saints what is the breadth and length and height and depth, and to know the love of Christ which surpasses knowledge, that you may be filled with all the fullness of God. These are our images of fullness. At Pentecost, we say, "The Spirit of the Lord has filled the earth," is all-embracing. But by contrast with all this, the light that our secular world offers us as the spirit of Christmas. I was trying to think of what it's like. It's like, when you've seen something very bright and you close your eyes, and on your retina there's this image in the shape of whatever it is that is, whether it's a light bulb or anything else that's bright. You can see it there, and then it fades, it's gone. It doesn't abide in the scriptural sense. It doesn't nourish us. It's only an idea, not a personal relation. Now, this Sunday is the first day of Advent. It's our Christian season of longing, of yearning for that fullness which is the fulfillment of why we were created, why the cosmos, the whole of creation exists. Again, listen to St. Paul, who speaks of the mystery of God's will, which he set forth in Christ for the fullness of time, to unite all things in him, things in heaven and things on earth. And he reminds us that God has made Christ the head over all things for the church, which is his body, the fullness of him who fills all in all. Now, I haven't said anything about the readings for today, and don't be afraid, I'm not going to start in at this point on the readings. But we're in cycle C this time around in the lectionary. And the problem with cycle C is that all the best readings, all the really juicy things have been taken up in A and B, and we're sort of left with things that don't strike us in quite the same way. We have the theme today of the end of the world. It's the bane of every preacher, or at least modern preacher who doesn't like to talk about things like the end of the world. But in the Gospels, end, telos, doesn't mean just the last act, the final moment, like that phrase that comes up on the movie screen when it's all over, the end. It always means the fulfillment of the purpose, the point of everything. We might say it answers the why that is found at the heart of every one of us and everything. Think of the little child's litany. Why, Mommy? Why, Daddy? Why? It goes on and on and on. It never ever gets quite to the center. And finally, of course, the parent gives up and says, because I said so. They run out of reasons. But there is an end in that sense. There's a point. There's a fulfillment. The end of all things where we don't need to ask why anymore. There we will see, comprehend, take in the fullness of God, who is all in all. And it's for this that we were created with these yearnings and longings that mark this season. And here's where yearning and fullness meet. Let me end with what is said in the Gospel of John that's familiar to all of us. Philip said to Jesus, Lord, show us the Father, and we shall be satisfied. Jesus said to him, have I been with you so long, and yet you do not know me, Philip? He who has seen me has seen the Father. The fullness of him who fills all in all.